The Nerdcast Empire is on the air a little bit later than normal, but we are here for Anime Thursdays on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. And some of these Thursdays over the next month or two, we may be either preempted or we may be a little bit late, but we will still be with you most of these Thursdays for our Anime Thursdays podcast live on twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. And of course, you can catch the VOD on Twitch, on YouTube, and of course, wherever you get your podcasts. Joining me in the studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. We made it. Better late than never, I suppose, but it's never a bad time to talk anime.
It is never a bad time to talk anime, and in the second half of the show, especially on Twitch, so obviously if you're watching on the YouTube version or the podcast version, you're going to want to go over to Twitch to catch this because it will not be in those VODs or on the podcast version. We're going to go through your video that you just completed today, I think, or yesterday.
Yes,
just today of Mike's favorite or best openings, or however you want to look at it, from the winter of 2002. And we'll be taking a look at that, and I'll kind of give my thoughts on that as well. 2002 was a very loaded year in opens. And it was also, as it turns out, as I found out, as I accidentally went through the whole year of 2002, there are a lot of shows from 2002 I have watched. I was really surprised how many opens, like I watched that show. So it'll be really interesting. So Mike will continue to go through 2002 over the next couple months, and eventually we'll have a full 2002 list, and we'll go over that as well on the upcoming episodes of Anime Thursday as we go forward. But we've got some news to get to too, and unfortunately, we've got some sad news to start off with in the anime world. The news broke just earlier this week that legendary voice actress Rachael Lillis, who we found out earlier this year was battling breast cancer, unfortunately succumbed to breast cancer and passed away on the evening of August the 10th. That news came from fellow voice actress Veronica Taylor. Of course, good friends in real life, as so many of those New York area voice actors and actresses were. Obviously, I think most people know Rachael Lillis from her roles in Pokemon as Misty, specifically,
and Jessie.
But she had so many roles, and we'll kind of get to some of those throughout this kind of news segment. But again, it's interesting because I was reading through this Anime News Network article that listed that she was 46, and then a fellow voice actor said no, she was 55. So not unusual in the entertainment industry, especially because sometimes a lot of entertainers either lie up or down their age to try to get into the door. So either way, far too young. Cancer has certainly affected almost everybody at this point. And kind of before we get into kind of specific roles, your general thoughts, because again, just really sad, and someone just with an incredible amount of talent that's definitely going to be missed.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember in my younger years being, filling out forms, and there'd always be like medical history in your family, and just you take for granted all those years when you don't have to mention that cancer has been in your family. And I think once it is, it's, things just aren't really the same after that. And I don't know her specific situation, but you read that, she had breast cancer, and then ultimately it made its way into her spine to where the point she couldn't really walk all that well toward the later end there. But you never know until you know. Like, it's just obviously catching it early is huge, but even then you don't know how aggressive it's going to be. And I just, having kind of gone through it in our family, that's just a really, really sad thing to deal with.
Yeah, and obviously the outpouring of support, because so many of the voice actors and actresses we follow either were contemporaries of her, they worked with her in New York, in LA, that really never had a bad thing to say about her and talked about her wonderful talent. But because of how long she's been in the industry, there was quite a bit of outpouring of support from the next generation of voice actors and actresses that said, hey, I watched you on Pokemon. I watched you on some of these other big shows that she was on, and you made me want to be a voice actor or voice actress. And that's that, that's kind of tough too, because it's like there's just two layers there where it's like not only are you losing a friend, but you're losing someone who was an inspiration to so many, and to kind of go through some of the other major roles. I mean, she was in a ton of stuff, which is not surprising, and probably a lot of non-anime stuff as well that doesn't really come up on here, but big roles in addition to her Pokemon roles. Obviously, she was Utena in Revolutionary Girl Utena. My favorite role of hers was Martina in Slayer's Next. Basically the comedy relief character in that series, and carried it very well. She was also in Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn, Boogie Pop Phantom. She was you've just been watching Irresponsible Captain Tyler, where she was Yuriko Star. She was Ono in Genshin.
Yeah.
Just had such a range in her characters as she played, and then the list on Anime News Network certainly extensive, and a lot of other shows. Another show that I really enjoyed was The World of Narue. She was in that as well, alongside Veronica Taylor, as it turns out, who was Narue in that show. And so many of those shows, of course, Veronica Taylor was Amelia in Slayer. So like those two almost synonymous, because it felt like they were getting cast side by side in so many shows. And certainly I saw Lisa Ortiz's comments, and that's obviously, I think they kind of knew when you saw the reports come out earlier this year and some of like the fundraising efforts, it was pretty clear that things weren't going well.
They were raising money to get her essentially like a home care nurse because she was having issues with the facility that she was at. Like, that's clearly not a good sign.
No, not at all. And
but you do mention her other roles, and it's kind of coincidentally that I just happened to be watching Irresponsible Captain Tyler and started rewatching Genshin not that long ago, only to kind of realize, she's in both of those. And she really plays, and I think you kind of see it with Jessie too, kind of that like irritable character that has to play off of someone who maybe is kind of an oaf or an idiot. Like Yuriko Star and Captain Tyler is that character to a T. Like she's like the straight-laced, like wanting to do a good job on this ship, and clearly you have Captain Tyler voiced by Crispin Freeman, who's just a complete moron. So the way they play off each other is really good. Like their performances are both amazing in that show.
Well, and you look at, I mentioned Martina in Slayer's Next. That's a character that is basically, thinks that she's following this god, and once Lena in the first episode of Next basically blows up her god in this town, she decides she's going to basically make it her life's mission to chase after Lena and try to make her life miserable. And of course, she falls in love with every evil character in that show, and ends up getting backstabbed and betrayed. And, a very endearing character in the series. And her and Lisa Ortiz in her role of Lena Inverse played off each other very well, the back and forth. I think of like the Brass Rackets episode was particularly funny. But just really tragic. It's, cancer, like I said, unfortunately seems to be anywhere and everywhere. And unfortunately, it's just sad when you see somebody that you have grown up watching in this industry, and it hits them as well. So
we talked about Pokemon, just how many anime fans that show created. It's staggering, but I mean that whole cast is just iconic to so many of us.
And I think it kind of brought, and then probably to some of the voice actors and actresses too, it kind of brought a little bit of bitterness when you think back to the fact that the Pokemon Company decided to dump that cast after however many seasons and bring in a completely new main cast when it was that cast, Veronica Taylor and Eric Stewart and Rachael Lillis that kind of made Pokemon. Yeah. They were the cast that all of us kind of grew up with, and it was always kind of sad that they just decided to do that. No offense to the new actors that got the roles, but at the time that was a kind of a big story.
It seemed like such an unnecessary move.
Yeah, without a doubt. But certainly our thoughts and prayers and best wishes to her family and friends, to all the people that were touched by her roles over the years. Certainly, we share condolences with all of you, and certainly, wish them all the best. Really sad news. Again, Rachael Lillis passing away just this past week from cancer. I want to move on to I wanted to pick a couple of very, very light stories to kind of go with that, because obviously that's a pretty heavy story.
For sure.
So I wanted to find something that was a little bit lighter. So the second story I wanted to talk about was just this article about G Fuel, the energy company based in New York, is now collaborating with One Piece because, of course, why not? The announcement that they're going to be, the wait list is now open for the One Piece Treasure Chest Collector's Box. It's $74.99, comes with 4 flavors of G Fuel energy formula, and all inspired by the devil fruit users within the Straw Hat Pirates. It's only available in the United States and Canada. It's probably illegal in some other countries, if I had to guess.
Yeah, probably.
But, you know, it feels like this is kind of the trend in the energy drink market, that they are kind of all latching on to some gimmick to get people to, because I mean, there's so many energy drinks. I mean, you can't turn on any stream on this very platform without getting hit over the head with several of them, whether it's energy powders or energy drinks or whatever it may be. And I'm going to guess this is probably going to end up selling pretty well, wouldn't you say?
It's kind of hilarious because I remember kind of when that first started becoming a thing where you had energy drinks specifically designed with gamers in mind, and me just thinking how ridiculous that was. And clearly I didn't have the foresight that these people did, because I can't imagine how large the market on this is. But you look at G Fuel's website and all of the different licensed collaborations they have, it's comical. Just looking at the anime category on their website, like underneath anime, they had Hatsune Miku, Naruto, an exhaustive amount of Dragon Ball Z flavors. You had like Kamehameha, Evil Emperor, Gohan Blackberry Tea, Ginyu Force, Super Saiyan. They have Gundam. They have My Hero Academia, Genshin Impact. The article also mentioned Attack on Titan and Kaiju number 8. And that's just within anime. That's not counting the video game category, where you have Sonic the Hedgehog and Atari 2600 and the Pac-Man Ghosts and Diablo. And I mean, there's like the Cadenza flavor, which is based on Persona 3, Mega Man. It's mind-blowing.
And, you know, on the other side of that, another company that you see everywhere on this platform is Gamer Subs, which is also a powder energy company. Now, I did the trial pack of Gamer Subs, and honestly, it's pretty good. And you do actually notice the difference. They had a dark cherry flavor that I need to order more of because it was actually really good. But, you know, they kind of go toward more the YouTube, Twitch streamer / VTuber, it appears. But I mean, the number of collaborations they have, just insane. And the amount of money that I'm sure they're making off of that is just incredible. So yeah, I think you're right. I kind of scoffed at it when you started seeing the stuff come out, but you know, not all of these, but a lot of these are healthier than, say, your average Red Bull or something that's, you know, high in calories.
Yeah, if you're drinking just standard Monster, you're probably doing it wrong, because that's going to be loaded in calories and mainly caffeine. Whereas I don't need any more caffeine than I already get. My brand of choice is typically Ghost. I really like their protein powder and their creatine supplements, and they have their licensed collabs too, whether it's like Oreo or was it Nutter Butter is one, I think, too.
I didn't even know Nutter Butter was still around.
Yeah, I think that's their let's see,
like their peanut butter.
Yeah,
collab,
they have that.
basically.
They have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles part of their gamer line. They have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They like Atomic Warheads, like the candy. They have flavors based on that. Like it's Chips Ahoy. Yeah, like clearly that's the direction everything's going. Cinnabon, like any kind of partnership you can make with this, it's just going to move product. And to their credit, their drinks are really good.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of money in it, and now One Piece and G Fuel getting together. And of course, there's been a lot of One Piece news. Of course, they're continuing to get ready for the big reboot.
Yeah,
the One Piece, and people seem to be super excited about that. I know they had a big One Piece day a couple weeks ago with some news items that came out of that. So it's certainly something we'll keep an eye on. And I know Chris is really excited. He's not with us tonight, but I know Chris is really excited about the new One Piece reboot. And honestly, I am too, because if it's a One Piece Kai situation, like I've always enjoyed every episode of One Piece I've watched. It's just hard to jump into a big series like that. But if they give it to me in a smaller package, I'd totally be on board for that.
Yeah,
so,
I agree completely.
So that's a little bit of news from One Piece and G Fuel. The last news item is just kind of almost an inspirational news item because I found this and it was really interesting. It's another story from CBR.com. The mangaka for the Full Metal Alchemist manga, Hiromu Arakawa, basically didn't believe that her manga was going to do very well. She thought it was going to be canceled and it was going to do very poorly. The article mentioned that she's quoted as saying, the first issue was published in color, but after that I didn't get any color. So I thought, oh, it's not popular. And I felt relieved, almost like she was going to be off the hook for having to do a whole bunch more of this manga. And she figured it would be canceled at the earliest, about 2 volumes of a book. So she's like, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go next. That's when I heard the number of copies of the first volume. I thought, this will definitely not sell. I talked to my editor and said, if it doesn't sell, let's go around the north together and sell it. So it did sell. It ended up being Square Enix's best-selling franchise of all time, or one of their best-selling franchises of all time, selling over 80 million volumes worldwide by July 6, 2021. The manga ran from 2001 to 2010, 27 volumes in total. Of course, 2 TV series, several movies. You know, it's funny. I mean, a lot of these artists just seem to be very modest people. They just think, oh, I'm doing this thing. I don't care. You know, maybe nobody's going to like it. And here she's producing one of the most important pieces of manga / anime that was going to be produced. And she's thinking she's going to get canceled after 2 volumes, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a point in time where this wasn't a sure thing. I've not read the manga, but when you've been able to spin off 2 ultra successful anime adaptations, video games, movies, it's hard to think that this wasn't just a slam dunk from the beginning. It also makes me wonder, and again, I'm not familiar enough with the manga industry. What is the failure rate on new manga? Like, how many of them are just dumped really quickly? Because she kind of made it seem like getting canceled after like 2 volumes wouldn't have been any odd thing.
Yeah, it's, we at times go to conventions and I always think, I'm just going to pick up some random volume of something that I've never heard of, because every time you go to a convention, there's another dozen titles that I've never heard of before. And probably half of those titles are going to be light novel anime at some point. And those are the ones that have already found some level of success because they're in English and they're in America. Like, this doesn't even count all the ones that American publishers are like, nah, we're good. We don't, or even Japanese are like, we're not going to keep running this. Like, 2 volumes is all we're going to give you on this. So I really do wonder, like, how much of this stuff comes out. And it kind of goes back to the story we had a couple weeks ago about the AI translation.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Like, this is where you're going to see a lot of this stuff come over here. So are there shows or are there manga that maybe didn't make it that now maybe have a shot because maybe it doesn't connect with a Japanese audience, but maybe a Western audience finds an interest in it?
Yeah, if you can cheaply shop your product to that much wider of an audience, that's, the likelihood that you might actually get something has to be considerably greater.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating. And again, it just seems like a Japanese thing. Like, I would think an American comic book author would know they had something big and be like, yeah, this is my life's work. This is so important.
It's been so long since they've had something big that they're just waiting.
But in Japan, it's just like, this might be terrible. Like, nobody's going to like this, but we're just going to go about, we'll just go sell it door to door. And, that's how we're going to move whatever copies we have.
Well, it also kind of transitions into the anime opening list that I worked on and created today for winter of 2002. You run into these shows that I'm not familiar with, and when I look them up on YouTube, pretty much everything I see is dubbed into Spanish or with Spanish subtitles, and it's kind of a similar thing. It's like, were there no American companies that were like, hey, let's give this one a shot, yet somehow this thing got big in Mexico or some other Latin American country? It's curious what hits other places and not here.
There's clearly a time between 2002 and like maybe 2004 or 2005 where we went from a lot of these shows that seem to be popular around the world never got a shot in English to every show got a shot and a full dub in English and a full physical release in English. Like, that bubble that took off from about this point. Because I mean, I mentioned in the open how many of these shows in 2002 I saw. So like a lot of this stuff came over here. Like how, this was on the ramp up, and so much of this stuff, like there was still stuff in 2002 where it's like, I've never heard of that show.
Yeah.
I'm guessing by the time you get around to 2004 and 2005, that list of shows that we haven't heard of is going to be much, much smaller.
Yeah. And I can't help but think a lot of that's because here in 2002, a lot of the companies over here are still licensing things from the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Like they're still catching up. There's a whole, table full of hit shows that haven't been localized. They could take a chance on Ginma Wars or Secret of Cerulean Sand or, Angelique Twin Collection, or you could bring over Cowboy Bebop or Trigun, or I just think there had to come a point where they finally addressed all those older shows. And here we are, maybe it's 2003 or 2004, and it's like, well, now we just have to license the new stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the stuff from 2002 came from, is 2003, 2004, 2005, when it finally came over here.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when, like, obviously one of the big shows in winter of 2002 was Full Metal Panic, and I'm like, when did I watch that? Because I doubt I watched it in 2002.
Right, no, I would say almost certainly not.
At least 2003, if I had to guess.
Yeah, so... yeah, it's fascinating to kind of see how the market changed and how it went, and then just kind of set the stage for what was going to be the big collapse of the late 2000s when companies started going under and everything they got licensed, basically the value plummeted because people didn't want it or they was overpriced.
Yeah,
So-
and I think you're kind of seeing similar things happening again, not so much in anime, but like in the video game industry.
Yeah.
Like they're throwing so much money around, convinced that everything that they create is going to be a sure thing, and everything's losing money now. Like clearly, you guys way overshot your projections.
Bottom line is the market's undefeated. The market,
Yeah.
There's so many people, and not to get too deep into this because we could talk about this all night. Coming from a financial background, there are a lot of people that think they know markets and they don't know markets. They don't understand supply and demand. They don't understand the waves of the market and the cycles and the ups and the downs. They have no clue. And these microeconomic markets that we're looking at, the anime industry in the 2000s, the video game industry today, like there are a lot of people that get paid a lot of money to make big decisions that basically said, I know better than the free market.
Yeah.
I know better than the trends. And even though all the signs point to X, I know better. So we're going to do Y. And then because, as I said, the market is undefeated, X ends up happening, and then your company goes out of business, or you're stuck with expensive copies of games that you can't sell.
Well, you're spending $750,000 for whatever random show that ADV paid for that there was no way in the world it was ever going to bring in that kind of money.
No.
It's like they kept paying for anime like every show was Dragon Ball Z, Evangelion, Cowboy Bebop, like those shows from the 90s that were huge hits. They just assumed that Japan was churning those out every year well into the 2000s, and that's just not the reality.
You have the combination of that, but the other side to it too is they were gambling. They were gambling that if I pay $750,000 for show X from Studio Y, then I'm going to get the next big show from Studio Y. Even though X just lost me a bunch of money, I'm hoping that I can keep that relationship so that when the next Dragon Ball Z comes, my company's like, well, they paid $750,000 for this crappy show. We're gonna give them this one as a reward. Well, there aren't that many Dragon Ball Zs. There aren't that many Evangelions. So, but that show never came.
And even beyond that, and we kind of see it too with like pro wrestling ratings. It's like, not only is that next Dragon Ball Z not coming, but there are so many more just random other things that someone's attention can be paid to now, that you're not just competing with, if you're ADV, you're not just competing with whatever Funimation just licensed. You're competing with what's on television, what's on the internet, what's, with Netflix. Like there's so many new outlets for entertainment that was going to suck away eyeballs. You assumed you were always going to have that built-in audience, and that's never a guarantee.
No. And touching grass, because you can go outside and not do any of those things.
I think with gaming, that's what we're seeing a lot too, where they thought that the numbers they were seeing during the pandemic were never going to stop.
Yeah.
And that's just Faulty logic.
Well, and the bottom line is about gaming, and then we'll jump into our break. There are a ton of games being made right now that are relatively cheap to make, relatively cheap to buy, and they're a lot of fun, and they're infinitely replayable, and they're the games that these streamers are playing on Twitch every day. There are your people playing Elden Ring. There are your people playing your AAA title. That will always be there. But there's also people playing Buckshot Roulette, which is the most basic of basic games, and they play it for hours at a time, and it's a great engagement game with your audience, and it probably cost them like $2 to buy that game.
And that's also not even counting the people who decided, I think I'm going to get off here and just play games that came out in 2012 or 2008. Games that I can own physically that I know will never be altered by a company that doesn't want me to own them, or worse, decides that the game they made 20 years ago now isn't acceptable and needs to be altered in some way to change what the game is to appease some random audience member.
Well, one step farther than that is the game that fans decided they wanted to see new versions of and create new versions. Like I still play Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and then fans created new versions of that. So like you're still getting a new game.
Well, you see that too with other new games where if a game comes out and has any kind of like anti-modding measures to it, that causes a backlash. People don't like being told that, hey, you can play this game, but only the way we want you to play it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a popular decision right now.
Well, I think that's why a game like Lethal Company has been so popular, because they just kind of like, whatever you guys want to do, make mods, download them, like make this game whatever you guys want it to be. Because I understand that there are people that would look at that and say, oh, well, you're letting your fans finish your game for you. But to me, it's like, you're paying money for a game, like, and maybe my idea of fun is to change it around, create my own levels, do whatever. I should have the right to do that.
It has to work both ways. If I'm the guy that just wants to install the game and play it and not mess with it and still have a good time, I need to be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, you can spend a lot of money on developers, but if you have a captive audience that wants to tinker around and add new features to your game and you don't have to pay them,
win-win.
They're having fun. You're making money. I don't see where there's no villain here.
No, and you're also drawing new audience members because they're watching somebody stream all these modded games. Like, man, I need to get into that game, and then your game continues to sell. So it's an interesting thing. It kind of got sidetracked a little bit from our news story, but just some fascinating stuff talking about what's popular out there and maybe some reasons why some things aren't popular. If you're listening on the podcast version of this, or if you're listening or watching the YouTube VOD of this, we're going to step aside. When we come back from break, we'll kind of give you a rundown on the schedule upcoming, and then we're going to wrap up the podcast. If you're live on twitch.tv or if you're watching on the Twitch VOD, we're going to be going through Mike's best of winter 2002 opening video. We'll be doing all of that on the other side of this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, live on Twitch as we are most Thursday nights. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Check out our store while you're there. Watch previous episodes of the Nerdcast Empire. Of course, you can catch the VODs for like 30 to 60 days on Twitch. You can catch them on YouTube. Of course, you can download them wherever you get your podcasts. Just a schedule update coming up. We'll be back on Sunday night for Music Weekly. Where are we up to now? August the 5th? 12th? 2nd? I don't remember. It's sometime in August now.
Yeah, let me...
Mike will tell me in just a moment. I'll stall while he looks that up, because I already forget.
I've already been through all the music and have pretty much determined what I enjoy out of it. I just, forgot the date. Is it the 9th, maybe? Is that right?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it's the 9th.
So we'll be going through the music coming up, and the playlist is the 2nd.
Oh, we're just now on the 2nd. Whoops.
So August 2nd, we'll be going through the music of that coming up on Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
The 9th will be the following week.
9th will be the following week. Next week on the Nerdcast Empire and Anime Thursdays, we're each going to give you 5 theme songs, opens, ends, insert songs, whatever it might be that you need to check out. We'll, of course, go over anime news as well. In 2 weeks, we will not have an Anime Thursdays. That is, of course, today is the 15th. That'll be the 29th of August. We will be on our way to Columbus for MatsuriCon, so we'll certainly be talking about that the following week when we get back, but we will not have an Anime Thursdays that week. We will also have some weekend disruptions of Music Weekly, but we'll tell you more about that as those get a little closer as our travel schedule requires. So that'll be coming up in the future. If you're listening on the podcast version or you're listening on the YouTube VOD, we're going to be heading to the outro. We're going to be heading to the end of this podcast now. If you want to catch the upcoming segment we're about to do on Twitch, go over to twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire and you can catch this. Or if Mike would like, actually, I could do that since I have the video up right now. I will paste the link of this video right now in the chat. And that way you can, of course, you can't do copy paste. I will remember that eventually. You can actually go watch Mike's video that just posted today. So if you're on the podcast version or the YouTube version, you can check that out. But for YouTube audiences, we're going to be going right to the outro. And for everybody else on Twitch, we're going to be talking some anime opening themes. For our YouTube and our podcast audiences, again, reminding you as we're getting ready to wrap this up, go to twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. Check out Mike's video. If you're watching on YouTube, we did post the link of the video right when I was getting ready to talk about it on Twitch. So you can check out the link and watch Mike's video of the best winter openings of 2002 on YouTube on your own. And with that, that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Nerdcast Empire. Big thanks to everyone for checking things out. Big thanks to Mike for putting this all together as far as the 2002 openings we could go through. Another great episode of the Nerdcast Empire. And again, coming up on Sunday, we will be taking a look at Music Weekly, the music of August the 2nd. Some really good stuff coming up on Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern time. We'll check that out. And then, of course, next week, we'll be back with another episode of music, or Anime Thursdays, I should say. And we're going to be talking music once again, as we'll be bringing you 5 more opening or ending or insert themes that you need to check out. Some of our all-time favorites. So we'll be doing that next Thursday. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. Big thanks to everyone that has checked us out, whether it's live or on the VOD. We really appreciate it. And that's going to wrap things up for this week. For the entire crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.